Hot maybe, but maybe it's just my nerves. So thanks to Dave and the worship team. I appreciate the extra song there. So I was going to bet the under for the length today, but I think we're back to even money. So that's good. How are you guys? Good. So if you're joining us for the first time online or here, my name is Will Pickett. I'm an elder here at Alive in Christ, and I have the privilege of speaking with you guys today. For all of you new and constant attenders, I do have a bit of setup, as opposed to Pastor Gordon, who you'll get here almost any other Sunday. A couple of things for you guys to know. I've never been to seminary, never been to Bible school. I'm not a student of theology. Don't know Hebrew, don't know Greek, don't know Latin. I'm not even the oldest elder. I'm Willie the younger elder, right? So but in spite of that, I have had some observations, right? I've had some observations about life, about the scripture, and I just want to be clear, these are not absolutes. When I'm talking to you today, if you have a small sample set in statistics, right, there's variabilities. You can have deviation from the norm. So what I'm saying today, I'm not pushing the dates and the times on you. They're just generalities, right? They're a normal distribution of people, and they're not all. Also, I'm not intended to be upsetting or pessimistic. What I really hope for you today is that you have a gift of an idea. So when you leave here, you have a gift of, hey, there's something there for me. And you can filter and sort through that, right? So given all that, will you guys come with me for a short trip this morning? All right. Thank you. That's right. So my discussion today, if we don't run into technical difficulties, I hope we have slides. We get a little flash here. It's called Trouble with the Curve. Do you like the slides? They kind of remind me of, you guys remember when I was a kid, we had generic food in the grocery store. I haven't seen it in a while. It was white with a black label, and you'd pick it and it would be corn or beans, right? I even had beer. I can remember generic beer. It's not a Pilsner, it was just beer, right? So anyway, these slides remind me a little bit of that. The point is that there's not a lot of color, not a lot of advertising, but not a lot of distractions. But I hope they still get the point across, right? If you're getting corn, you're getting beer, you'll see what you'll get. So I originally had this discussion. That's the beauty of being a guest speaker. I don't have to come up with something new every week. So I originally had this discussion with my mom. She was 73, I think, at the time. I've had it with my kids and most of them and their spouses and some coworkers, typically on a whiteboard, and we'll flash through it. But it'll be new, hopefully, to you and the internet and everybody out there. So let's go ahead and let's get going. Whoops. So the first scripture today I pulled out was Psalm 90:10. Right? The days of our years are 70, 80, if by might. Additional years are labor and sorrow, for it is soon gone, and we fly away. So a score, right? If you haven't tuned up on your Gettysburg Address, is 20 years, right? So 70 is 70. If you're mighty, you might get 80. It's a little bit different than the King James Version. It's close, right? I got this one, was an essay by a Jewish study. He wrote an essay on Psalm 90:10, on the one verse, 4 chapters long. And so this was his writing and interpretation of the Masoretic text, the Jewish tradition text. And so that's what I share with you today. So he talked about a lot of things in his pages. He talked about the origin. Is this Moses, right? It says in the front, is this Moses, origin from Moses? He talked about comparing it with the lifespans at the time it was written, is 70 and 80. Is that appropriate for when it was written? He talked about there's some punctuation difficulties, there's some textual difficulties. The pool got really deep really quick, right? And so it's like, whoa, there's obviously not a theologian here, right? So it kind of reaffirmed when I was kind of looking into that for this, that I'm going to take it and present it in the words that it was given as they're written. He did summarize at the end of his that, and rightfully so, the human life is short, right? So that can be pulled from there, particularly when compared with the eternity of God, which was previous in that chapter, right? It also is clear from the text, regardless of the contextual difficulties and punctuation, that life is hard. Are we all right? All right. That life is hard, right? And it also was the basis of his plead, right, to return to God. So he talks about this in 90:10. Right after that, he talks about God being just and that he would judge, right? And then he has another verse that I'll touch on in a minute. So we'll just take it for that. Let's take it for face value. Second scripture today, Ecclesiastes 3:1. Everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, right? You know this verse, there's a time to sow, a time to reap, time to gather in, a time to spread out, time to laugh, a time to cry, time to live, a time to die, right? So again, not theologically going really deep, but let's take that as for what it is, right? We have seasons, and our life does. I thought I had one more. I do. Psalm 9, this was the one that was two after the one that just said you get 70 or 80, right, by might. The psalmist says, teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. So, Lord, this is your word. These are not mine, and it's a sharp sword, and it will go forth and do the things it's going to do, regardless of the presenter. So may there be something here for someone today, and may it be to your glory. Amen. So, why was I having this discussion with my mother? Right. So a little bit of background on me and my family. I come from a long line of compulsive behaviors, generational, right? Generational struggles with substances, addictions, suicide, right? A lot of different things. So my mother, God bless her, is not exempt from those things, right? And with God's grace, she's worked through a lot in her life and a lot of different things. Grew up in high school in a house, daughter of a miner in Montana with no electricity, no running water, and tar paper. And has been fairly successful at elevating herself out of that, right? So I had this when she was in retirement. She'd been retired over a decade at that time, and she felt compelled to work, even in her retirement, which is a good thing, right? Admire that and stay busy. And so she, at the time I had this discussion, she was a bookkeeper. And so she was a bookkeeper for her church. She was also for a nonprofit ministry that drills wells in Tanzania. She was the bookkeeper for a golf course, the Golf Pro, and the restaurant associated with that. She was the bookkeeper for a subdivision developer that was developing the golf course. She was for a hairdresser, a doctor, a landscaping business. She also was keeping books for a small airplane parts manufacturer. She led Celebrate Recovery at church. She did and still does, goes every week to the women's prison and works on their recovery program with those gals. And she works with the girls at Hope House. So at 73, in those scenarios, I thought, Mom, have you got a minute? Can we talk about how you're spending your time? I'm not saying it's bad, but are you spending your time in consideration of your days? Are you spending your time in consideration of the curve? The curve is something I made up, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that was my question to her, and that's why I pulled this together. Any good engineer, right? You're going to start with your given data. What do I know? So I started with Mom, given data, right? The days of our years are 70 and 80 by might. Immediately we had a roadblock. And Alice lived to be 102, son. Agreed. I think I'm going to live to 102. Fair enough, Mom. Not going to argue, not going to say no. So let's agree that the curve is a normal, and you could be out at the 100th percentile, and you're out at the end. So let's do that. But that doesn't change that there's a curve. Can you agree to that? Yeah, I could agree to that. Good. So we could move on. And hence my caveat at the start, right? I did that for you guys, same position. If you're like, hey, that's not me. Might be true. The curve's still there. Seasons are still there, right? So the second, given data, life can be divided into seasons. Can you agree to that, Mom? Yep, I can do that. So let's talk a little bit about the seasons. So season 1, 0 to 6, right? I called that your child season, right? Got to watch them carefully, right, in that season. They take a lot of time. I remember had someone talk to me and they said, when the kids are little, the days are long and the years are short, right? Having 5 kids, that rang true, right? That time was fast, and I was tired. But those years were quick. That tired years were quick. So you gotta help them get their food and help them go to the bathroom. Lock the door so they don't wander off. You may have kids or grandkids that get out the door, right? And you panic. Find a television. They'll start to have a little bit of attention span, and they'll do that, right? So that's their first season, those first 6 years, our child season. Season 2, our next 6 years, call them tweener years, right? They're not a child, you're not a teenager, you're something in between, right? So they make their own sandwich. They can help them cook their first toasted cheese, right? Make some soup. My kids, when they were that age, 6 to 12, I had them mowing, right? And I'm pushing mower with me to start with, and then mowing. I had somebody at a conference talking about teaching your kids to mow, and they said, if you want a good-looking yard, don't teach your children to mow. But what's your goal, right? And what's your goal? Is your goal a good-looking yard, or is it to grow somebody who knows how to mow the yard, right? Might not let them weed eat, right? It's heavy, spinning fishing line, whack a toe with that fishing line, right? That'd be the end of your spouse. That'd be the last time they're weed eating. Yep, understood. They can look after their pets, make sure they have water and food, right? They enjoy family games, board games, game night, and they still like TV. Season 3, the teen years, right? These are great years. These are years of high anticipation. In the teen years, a lot of free time, right? They make good babysitters. They'll get some car keys, right? I got an old diesel car with I think it had 80 horsepower with a stick shift. Forced them to learn. I remember my daughter crying in the approach into Costco as she had killed it 4 times. That's character building, dear. That's why we're doing this. Might let them start to use the chainsaw a little bit. They don't have a lot of responsibility, right? They might have 1 or 2 bills, right? But it's not. They don't have other people typically on their shoulders, right? Might have a girlfriend or boyfriend. They have a lot of things to do. My kids are in sports and they're everywhere every night at church or sports or with their friends, right? And any of those items could change on a whim, right? I've got to do this, it's so important, and then it's like, oh, somebody's having a get-together, so that's all washed off, we're going to go do that, right? So, fun time, great time. Season 4, I call this the PPL season, the prepare to launch. This is a time of exceeding anticipation. Well, we got season 5, long haul. So you're coming out of some rapidly changing years and you've launched, and man, you got 40% of your life in that long haul, right? I lumped that from 24 to 56, right? My 6-year-old didn't do it, my 12-year-old definitely didn't do it, my 18-year-old did, and my 18 and my 24-year-old did not have a lot of overlap. But 6 years difference in my life in the long haul. Dad, what are you doing? I'm still working on sprinkler pipe, still working. I'd have the same desk that I had 6 years ago even, right, at work. Change is slow, and it's a slog, right? That's a slog. So it can seem like it's all the same, and it can seem like it's going to remain the same. And in here, this is the first one where you can start to see the curve, right? That's what I'm talking about. That's the curve. So what is the curve? I define that curve as your power curve, right? So what is my power? My power is my energy, right, times my influence. And that's the power I have in this world. And when you're young at the tails and the front tails, you don't have a lot of influence. And you don't have much power, right? You can influence your family, but you're not making big, life-changing decisions or responsibilities or have actions that are going to impact a lot of people. And so as you age, that power curve goes up. By the middle of your curve, right, you might have a lot of influence and power over a lot of different people's lives, right? Your children, right, their success and failure, their ability to eat and where to live and what to do. Your parents, right? If you have parents, you might be in the middle of your power curve and taking care of them. You might be critical to the success of your company or your staff. I've had, in this portion, being in there now, I've had chances where I had to look, an employee in the eyes and have very difficult conversations. And the ramifications of not having those hard conversations are, I might have to look into the eyes of the balance of my employees that also have responsibilities and that also have people counting on them, and tell them the whole thing went down because I wouldn't act on that, right? So this can be a weighty time. This can be a heavy time, right? Because particularly compared to your teen years where you're worried about just songs I'm listening to or TikTok or something else. I don't know, but it's weighty, it's different, right? So the front and the back, right? So that first half, our energy exceeds our influence when you're young, right? I have that conversation with my son, right? And you have ideas and you have energy, and sometimes those aren't received well, right? Who are you? You're a student, you're a young person or young employee. So that can be frustrating. Frustrating for a young person to have those things and not have the power to get that across and have the influence. On the second half, right, you might have some influence, but man, I'm frustrated because I don't have the energy I had. I can't do the number of things that I had. So I could influence this, and I could bring a lot to this situation, but I'm tapped out. My energy's tapped out, right? So this is a whole slide that was a holdover. Shouldn't have been there. All right. So season 6. PPL again. We had a PPL before, right? Prepare to launch. This is prepare to land. Right? It's the same kind of season. High anticipation, right? Where do I want to live? What do I want to do? Right? Still working. Might be think I'm going to downsize my house so I have less maintenance so we can travel more. Going to buy some property in Montana so I can have a cabin and live way deep in the woods, right? Going to get an RV. So this is a neat time, right? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What I see here commonly, not always, is failure to recognize you're not in the long haul kind of change period. Right? In the long haul, 6 years are like 6 years. You're in the tails, you're coming into the tails again. 6 years is not like 6 years was in the long haul. And buying a cabin in the woods is a great idea for 10 years. Might be tough for 20. Right? Wood gets hard, wood gets heavy, snow gets deep. Right? 80 years old. So, got to recognize changing is coming, is accelerating, right? Season 7, second teen years. Still make good babysitters. They're just not their siblings. Right? They stop using the chainsaw somewhere in that period possibly, at least a 24-inch bar, maybe down to a 16, right? They don't have as much responsibility, a lot of free time. Might have a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a lot to do, all which can change on a whim. I think about my dad. I remember watching him in his second teen years, right? He went to, he'd snowbird to Arizona, so he'd go down for the winter and come back to Montana. He took a couple of cruises, square dance cruises. There is, or was, at least that sort of thing. It's a pretty niche population you're looking at. And then also he'd chase callers, right? I guess there's a hierarchy of square dance callers. Didn't know, never can't separate them. But drive for miles, go to Lolo to spend a few weeks, right? Or a week because somebody's coming to town, right? So not a lot of responsibility, whims change, delightful time, a lot of free time. Season 8, second tweener, right? Power curves coming down. Still make their own sandwich. Might have to cook with some supervision. Might lose their car keys, right? And might mow. Weed eater might be getting a little heavy, right? They can still look after their pets. Still like playing games. They still like a little TV. At least that's been my experience with my dad. Judge Wapner, right? Whatever it is, floats your boat. Last season, season 9, right? It's the second childhood. Not saying that everybody's tapers evenly or even tapers at 80, but it's coming, right? Unless by God's mercy you get pulled out in the middle. Sleep much, might need some help with your food, might need some help at the bathroom, and I still have to lock the doors, right? Had this discussion with my mom and my kids, and my stepdad and my mom shared with all of us, right? Don't take our dignity, right? Don't take away everything we do in the tails, right? If we can do that, we want to do that. And so be mindful of that. And so we heard that, right? We heard that. And have some grace and understanding with them. Likewise, I've seen some people in the tails that struggle with some pridefulness, right? It's hard to be graceful. They refuse to accept some of the hard stuff, and refuse to use a walker and tip over on their caretakers because they I won't do that and hurt them. So if you're in the tails, be graceful. Be graceful. Recognize where you're at. Try to make it easy. And if you're taking care of people in the tails, love them and be graceful with them. Right? So I said at the start, it's not life application, but I did put some notes down again for you guys to think about, right? The first one, where are you at in the curve? Right? Do you recognize you have seasons? And have you come to grips with that? Not sure my mother had, right? That there were seasons. Knew it. Did not recognize, didn't own it, right? Did recognize they're not the same size. And the rate of change is not the same, right? That was probably more that she struggled with, right? Wasn't that there wasn't going to be a change, but that they would become quicker. And do you recognize your power curve? Second item for life application is, do you recognize the brevity of the curved tails in yours and others' lives? I have this discussion a lot with my kids, right, in their prepare to launch or teen years, right? Those are unique times. And when I was in them, I pushed hard to get into the long haul. And I got to go get a job. I got to go get some stuff squared away. I'm pushing through to get to the other side, not recognizing how flat that other side was, not recognizing that the pace of my change was going to be different. And I missed some stuff, right? I missed some stuff. And then, are you preparing to land? And are you being realistic on your power curve? Another life application. How dear do you hold your time with people in the tails? If you're raising your kids or grandkids, do you appreciate the speed at which they're changing? Are you missing family events where the numbers are limited? So on my own, on this one, I had a few things, right, um, that I didn't appreciate. I didn't recognize. Like I told you earlier, I pushed through my launch years to get a job. Missed some opportunities with my dad. Didn't recognize his curve. I'm concerned about my own, right? Kids are young, in my curve, a little self-centered, pushing to raise my power, right? Increase my influence. A lot of time on the road, missing a lot of things. Didn't recognize their curve. Didn't appreciate that. So, hold dear your time with the people in the tails. Another life application, you have a succession plan. I'm not trying to be formal, do you have a will, all that, right? But are you making it easy for those that are coming behind? Have you made it clear where you want things to go? Who gets the family Bible? Who gets something, right? So that there's not fighting, so that it's a blessed time for them, right? Have you made it easy on them? Have you helped separate the wheat from the chaff of what you have for them? And help them understand where the wheat wants to go, where you want the wheat to go, right? Wow, that was really... You want to take me back to the slides there? I don't know what got... I'm touching nothing. We might be done with slides. That's all right. So, hold time, succession plan, and then are you making your decisions based on your days and your power curve? The other verse we talked about, right? It was a two after that, two verses immediately after. You can shut that off. That's probably just distracting. 2 verses after the 70 or 80, right? He said, teach me to number my days, right? So had the discussion with my mom, laid it all out, and then I started, Will, you number your days? No, not really. So how does that look like? Well, what am I going to do? How do I do that, right? I've got 29,000 days at the start, right? By the time I did this, I had about 14,000 days left. So I'm going to start at 14,725 and subtract 1, and so next day I number the day, and that's like, that doesn't seem practical. That doesn't help me, right? How does that help me live, right? So I'm a little geeky, so what I did is I divided my life into 1,000-day periods, right? And at the time, I had 13,000-day periods left, right? There's 29 of them and change at the start, so I had nearly half. Since then, I'm down to 9, right? So what do you do with that, right? I visit that occasionally. What are the significant things that have happened in the last 1,000 days? What do I want to happen in the next 1,000 days? But that might be geeky, so you don't have to do that either, right? You don't have to do that. So what I said, I shared this with my kids, is the easiest way is to evaluate your days based on the number of significant events that you're about to enter you have left. So, how do I want to spend 8 more birthdays with my mother? How do I want to do, or what do I want to do or share with my son in his last 2 graduations? I'm many more Christmases together. Don't have to count them out, right? But that's quick math. That's quick math. You can count your days that way. And, like I said earlier, I missed some significant things there, right? I remember. We got something clicking there? No. Fair enough. We'll ignore it. So I missed. I didn't miss it. By God's grace, I did catch it, right? But I could have missed it. I remember my youngest daughter, the last time she sat on my lap. Her and her brother were squirming and fighting, and we got to sit there, and after a little bit, she stood up. And not again, right? As I said, with my dad, right, he wanted to go to Alaska. I was a senior. I was preparing to launch. I had plans. I'm going to get to the long haul, Dad. And he said, let's take 2 weeks or 3 weeks and let's drive to Alaska. We'll drive the whole state. Don't got time, Pop. Got to work. Got tuition coming. Got to go do things I got to do. Bad choice. It was a terrible choice. Young, right? So that is my discussion. I was going to go, I don't know if through the verses again, but right, Lord, we get 70, 80, if by might. There is a season for everything. There is a season. Right? Teach me to number my days that I might not sin against you. So, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate sharing with you. So, I think the worship team, you had some more songs because this was going to be short. Thank you all. If while they're singing, if somebody has something they'd like to have some prayer about, please come up. Elders want to come up, or pastors. If somebody needs that, we'll pray for you.